They made sure nothing moved again. The larger body by the hearth was last. It had slept unnaturally deep, chest still rising in slow intervals when the others had already gone still. Roland and Penny exchanged a look. He stepped forward and put his full weight behind it. It took longer than with the others. In a chest under burlap fabric some distance from the hearth, Lymphocytus found their equipment. Roland nearly shouted. He caught himself and crouched over the open chest instead. What the hell? The armor pieces were stacked wrong, like someone had spent real time with them. Tooth marks in the leather straps and buckles. Nothing was missing. Their other belongings were there too. Pouches, straps, a few personal items, all gone through. What hadn't gleamed or made noise had been left alone. Penny lifted her lockpicks with both hands and held them briefly against her chest before pocketing them. My lockpicks. Lymphocytus was quieter about it. He held his scrolls with the careful deliberateness. And these. Roland looked up from strapping on his breastplate. I thought you could already do magic. Why are you so happy about paper rolls? Magic takes a physical toll. Lymphocytus set the scrolls aside. With these, I don't have to push as hard. Roland held out his hand. Can I use them? Almost certainly not. Lymphocytus moved them out of reach without making a production of it. You could certainly try, but I'm not sure you'd understand the instructions. Roland had already picked one up and unrolled it. He studied it with what appeared to be genuine effort. There's no writing. It looks like a child drew this. Well, everything I need is there. Lymphocytus took it back. Penny had been moving between the bodies, crouching to check what each one carried. She looked back over her shoulder. Think it's all right to take their things? Didn't they do the same to us? Roland was already working a silver chain loose from a wrist. He didn't phrase it as a question. Some gnolls had small leather pouches, electrum and silver, sticky with old grease. Others wore crude silver chains, heavy for what they were. Some pieces clearly hadn't started as theirs. Broken clasps, half rings, things gathered without any understanding of origin or worth. The chieftain had two broad silver armbands in noticeably older and better work, and a belt pouch that sat heavier than expected. When Penny crouched near the chieftain, she noticed it was holding something. She had to work it free, finger by stiff finger. A stone. Dark red, almost black in the low light, polished in a way that wasn't natural. Warm. Not just from the body. She thought she felt it pulse. In her palm, it weighed more than it should have, and across its surface, small inclusions caught the firelight like droplets, stopped mid-fall. Lymphocytus came over without being called. What have you got? The gnoll was holding it. Penny turned it slowly in the light. Seems important. He held his palm above hers. His face went red, then slack, eyes rolling back to show only whites, a nosebleed starting without warning. When he came back to himself, he wiped it away with the back of his hand and looked at the smear for a moment. It's probably just a regular stone. You haven't studied every stone in the world. Penny tilted it toward the fire. I think you're supposed to put something in these holes. Wine, maybe? She looked across the room. Or blood. You haven't talked about anything else since we met, Eldrin. Eldrin said nothing, but something shifted in his expression that might have been agreement. Roland looked up from the chain. Maybe you're not supposed to fill them. Maybe you attach it to something. Look for the same pattern, but raised. Penny turned the stone over. What's the opposite of a pit? A hill. Roland dropped the chain into his pouch. Look for 4 bumps. I'll finish up here. Penny walked the room with the stone in hand. She checked the walls, the floor, the area around the hearth. Nothing announced itself, just soot, bones, and the residue of a space long occupied. Lymphocytus had gone quiet. That made him seem like he'd temporarily stepped somewhere else. He moved along the walls with his palm flat against the stone, reading by feel. Behind the hearth, where years of heat had cracked and glazed the rock face, he stopped. Here. Behind a soot-darkened panel sat a carved area in the wall, not recessed, but raised. 4 gentle bulges, rounded and worn, arranged in a pattern that landed with immediate recognition. Not identical to the pits in the stone, inverted, as if someone had pressed the stone's form outward from the other side. Penny held the stone up beside it. It didn't slot in cleanly, but it belonged here, the way some things are obvious before you can say why. Around the raised forms were faint scratches, a slight discoloration in the surrounding rock, the kind left by long, repeated contact between 2 surfaces that had slowly learned each other. Roland had finished. He wiped blood from his glove. Nobody carves shapes into mountains for fun. Eldrin leaned forward, something like appreciation moving across his face. Blood always works. Water first, though. Penny was already reaching for her water skin. So, water on the stone, then blood? She glanced at Eldrin sideways. You volunteering? She tipped it before he could answer. I'm kidding. She let it run slowly across the surface. At first, nothing. Then the sound changed. Not water on stone, a dull, spongy pull, as if it was being taken rather than running off. The 4 pits darkened and drank, and for a moment the surface seemed to soften, not liquid, receptive. Cold followed immediately. The warmth in the room drew back from her hand. The fire crackled and burned lower, its edges briefly blue. From the pits, something seeped upward, thin, milk-white mist, almost like steam, but falling rather than rising, trailing along Penny's fingers before dripping to the floor and vanishing without sound. The predator had abandoned its post and stood rigid, hackles raised along its spine. Something pulled behind Lymphocytus's forehead. Not pain, a thought trying to form without language to carry it. The stone was heavier in Penny's hand. The pits held something that resembled still, pale glass. Try the niche. Lymphocytus kept his voice low, careful, like he was trying not to disturb something mid-process. She carried it to the carved hollow. The air thickened as she brought it close. The stone didn't slide into place so much as arrive there, a dull, bodily thumb that moved through the wall under her palms, as though the mountain had drawn breath and decided to hold it. A slow vibration followed, persistent. The fire shifted sideways. The 4 pits pulsed in sequence, not randomly, but as if answering something deeper inside. Nothing opened. Whatever had started felt unfinished. Penny dragged 2 fingers through congealed blood on the floor and smeared it across the stone surface. It didn't pool. It moved, drawn along lines too fine to have seen before, which now glowed faint dark red. Not runes, not symbols. Negative forms, as if something had pressed against this surface from the other side so many times the stone had learned its shape. She set it back in the niche. Then they heard it. A sound behind the wall, slow, searching. The predator's gaze fixed on the stone. A low growl, barely sound at all. Lymphocytus recognized the feeling, not magic being cast, but magic waiting, like a contract where one party had just signed. The wall stilled. The stone in the niche could no longer be moved. Nobody moved. The room had changed, not threatening exactly, but expectant, like something on the other side of a door was deciding whether to come through. The wall gave way with resistance, scraping heavily against mountain stone. It slid aside just enough for them to squeeze through. When Penny, last through, pushed it back into place, it closed without sound. The wall wanted to seal itself. Light died behind them, pitch black. "Light us up, Lympho," Roland said, too casual. "You've got a torch, light it. I can see fine." "What about the rest of us?" Penny's voice came from somewhere ahead. "I see okay. It's just a passage. We're almost through." "You're not afraid of the dark, are you, Roland?" "Come on, it's not fun walking around blind. Think about Eldrin and the cat." Eldrin's voice drifted back, dry. "I always see, even in dark, and the cat's nocturnal." "So it's just me who can't see. Okay, fine. But don't come crying to me when something eats you." Roland walked directly into Lymphocytus, impact jarring them both. "Watch it, it's tight here." Lymphocytus sounded irritated. "Single file, there's stairs coming up. Then the passage turns right. Let Eldrin and the cat pass. I'll help you." "Still don't get why you can't just make light." "You'll thank me for not being completely exhausted if we meet something more dangerous than darkness." Penny walked at the back, footsteps strangely flat. Her steps should have echoed. The corridor was too narrow to swallow sound, but the noise died too early. Something was dampening it. She didn't stop, didn't even get a chance to turn her head. What she heard instead was a slow, wet sound above her, something sticky pulling free from a surface it had been pressed against for a long time. A drawn-out, viscous schlurp, followed by a dull schlap that didn't echo, just spread. Ceiling's collapsing, she thought, before the stench hit her. Acidic, burning her nostrils before anything touched her. She opened her mouth to warn the others, but sound wouldn't come. The last thing she heard before pressure slammed down on her back was her own foot hitting the floor. And this time, the sound disappeared completely. Then ice-cold pain lancing through her body. Something sticky and corrosive grabbed her waist, ate through clothes. She felt nauseating white agony as skin held to breaking point. A sound tore from her throat she didn't recognize as her own. The others turned. Roland saw nothing and understood nothing yet. Lymphocytus wasn't sure he could even describe what he was seeing. It filled the corridor without really having a shape. Viscous, half-transparent mass, thick as congealed honey but with a damp, living surface that never quite stopped moving. Slow waves rolling through the body like something inside was constantly rearranging itself. Here and there, darker streaks, remnants of what had once been solid matter. Leather dissolving, a metal piece without edges, bones bleached to gray. It took up most of the space and was currently dragging Penny into itself. No eyes, no mouth. But sometimes the mass contracted in a way that felt directed, like it was watching Lymphocytus without having anything to watch with. "Lympho! Light! Now!" Roland screamed. Lymphocytus tried, but fear made his hands stupid. He felt the ground wrong under his feet, like he was standing slightly beside himself. A white sphere with blue light illuminated the space. Weak, but enough. The predator snarled, tried to push forward, but the way was blocked. It hissed at the men ahead to move, but nobody could. Eldrin disappeared around where the corridor curved left. Penny twisted in the thing's grip, sobbing, not from despair, just from the body's insistence on expressing what was happening to it. She found her dagger in her inferno, managed to pull it out from its sheath and angled the blade where her arm had room to connect. The mass gave in one direction. The others saw it split clearly. One mass still held Penny but was smaller now. The other moved toward Roland with purpose. Roland didn't hesitate. "We're coming, Penny! Hold on!" He swung wildly with his longsword. Steel bubbled when it cut through. Room temperature butter. He made a deep cut side to side. The mass went still briefly. Then the upper half jumped to the ceiling and started moving toward lymphocytus, while the lower half stayed put, significantly smaller than before. Roland noticed his sword had stopped gleaming. Completely dull, the edge warped. It would take a blacksmith's serious work to make it sharp again. Lymphocytus looked frantically between three different-sized masses, one moving toward him on the ceiling, one advancing on Roland, one holding Penny. He was nearly paralyzed by options. "Fuck it," he muttered, stretched both arms out, found the base, reached for power from his core that should flow through his hands, but something in the middle failed him. Three large burning meteorites launched from his palms, one at the thing coming for him, two at what held Penny. Mid-air, the spheres looped and reversed direction, slammed into lymphocytus with such force he flew backward, skull connecting with stone floor. He went somewhere else entirely. Penny's voice cracked into a bubbling wheeze. Her skin was cooking, blistering. The mass pulled her closer, but she fought with everything left. Roland glanced at her with something he didn't have a name for. Started to say something when searing pain exploded across the side of his face. A long pseudopod of caustic gel had shot from the mass opposite him, and half his head was stuck. It ate into him while pulling, suction and acid at the same time, his neck straining against something that wanted him closer. His brain translated this the only way it could. "It's trying to take my head off." His mouth was trapped, or he would have screamed, and he understood now exactly what Penny had been screaming about. The ceiling mass stretched down toward lymphocytus like melted cheese, purposeful. It coiled around his ankles and waist. He woke with a shrill scream. Felt like someone had poured boiling oil on him while something tried to saw off body parts. He didn't have time to think more before being yanked up, hanging upside down. Penny had almost no strength left, nearly completely enclosed by the mass. But the instant lymphocytus was pulled to the ceiling, the predator lunged forward, bit her arm, planted back legs hard against the ground, and dragged with all its strength. She came free, red, half-naked, huge, fluid-filled blisters covering her body, her hand hanging in shreds from the wrist. She saw Roland stuck by the head, one eye nearly forced out through the socket. She staggered toward him. They made eye contact. He waved her off, not confidently, but hopefully. So Penny used everything she had to run toward lymphocytus. Every step hurt more than the last. She wasn't fast, but she was faster than the mass she'd just escaped. The predator stood guard between her and it, snarling. She didn't reach lymphocytus before his mass pulled him up to the ceiling again. She was too short, in too much pain to jump. Around the corner came Eldrin, unbothered by the chaos. "There's an opening here, but it's locked." Finally, something I can do, Penny thought. "Hold lymphocytus," she croaked, voice more air and phlegm than words. That's exactly what Eldrin did. The old man braced himself, grabbed hold with all his strength while the mass tried dragging lymphocytus up. He screamed in pain. "I'm breaking in half! I'm coming apart!" Roland wasn't thinking, could only see white. Too much pain to think. He had to break free, but the edge was warped, porous. But the pommel was still hard, he realized. Before finishing the thought, he flipped the sword midair, grabbed the blade with both hands, and drove the pommel into the mass with a thud. He felt something give. The suction wasn't as strong. He braced against the ground and jumped backward as hard as he could. Schlap! Parts of his face tore from skull. Ear, eye, eyebrow, shallow skin. But he was free. Lymphocytus fought with everything to break free, but it hurt too much. He tried one last time to summon a projectile, but he was completely gone, totally disoriented. A large arrow of dark matter left his hands and struck the body of the mass that had held Penny. It shuffled back several steps before climbing the wall, then up to the ceiling to seep away between cracks in the stone. Lymphocytus smelled his own boiling, melting skin, ringing in his ears, transitioning to static, then black. Eldrin felt strength leave Lymphocytus's body. "I believe he's quite dead," Eldrin said matter-of-factly. "Like hell he is!" Roland shouted desperately from the ground. "Pull harder, old man! Nobody dies here, you hear me?" But his courage sank when Lymphocytus's light sphere extinguished, and the room went black again. Roland saw nothing but heard something hurled at him, barely rolled aside in time, felt a wet, splatting sound miss him by centimeters. He was on his feet fast. Penny had reached the corridor's end. Sure enough, a wall like before, but this one had a lock. She looked at her mangled, non-dominant hand. Unusable. It would take a miracle to pick this old lock with just her mouth and right hand. Please, God, yes, that God who listens to little girls like me, please let this lock open. If it does, I'll donate money to the church and spend more time with the holy than I usually do. Deal? Like a miracle, the lock clicked. She nearly fell forward when the wall gave way. Roland ran toward Lymphocytus and the old man by sound alone. "Scream so I can hear you!" he yelled to Eldrin. "No screaming here, just pulling and tearing." Good enough as a landmark. "You die and I'll kill you, magic boy," Roland thought as he leaped and struck precisely with the sword pommel into the mass, pulling Lymphocytus between itself and Eldrin. Splat. It released Lymphocytus immediately. He thudded to the ground. "Take him and run to Penny. I'll hold it." Roland's voice was desperate. He didn't believe in his own ability right now. The ceiling mass seemed to have given up. Roland saw nothing but heard something moving away above him and something else shuffling closer. "Come on then, slime filth!" Roland screamed, holding his sword wrong way in front of him. The attack came as impact this time rather than suction. A fast, hard slam to the torso that burned on contact. Roland flew into the wall, nearly crushed by the pressure. Penny called around the corner. "Roland, you okay?" A grunt came back. Good enough. She limped to Eldrin and Lymphocytus and started helping drag, hard with only one arm. But the predator helped, pulling Lymphocytus's cloak in its teeth. Finally, they were around the corner and at the exit. Roland fought back with all his strength, swinging the sword furiously. Couldn't land anything solid. It made him angry. In a final effort, he pushed off the wall with his feet and, like a projectile, headbutted the creature with his horn-decorated helmet. It gave way, slithered backward, not fleeing, not retreating, just stabilizing. It threw itself at Roland with its full weight, but Roland was ready, jumped aside. He wasn't fighting anymore. Time to get out. He met Penny around the corner. She'd been coming back for him. She led him right, and they both threw themselves through the opening, slamming the wall shut behind them. They heard something hurl itself against the wall. They held firm. It tried twice more. When nothing gave way, Penny and Roland heard something behind the wall, shuffling backward, retreating into darkness. The room was crammed with crates, sacks, barrels, moisture-damaged, mundane, food, candles, cloth, nothing that gleamed. The floor was strangely clean, polished by something that had been dragged across it for a very long time. In the center of the room lay Lymphocytus, motionless. "He just stopped breathing," Eldrin said, tone flat.